Welcome to the Dev Ready podcast, where we're helping non-techs build great tech. Today, fortunate enough to be joined by Phil Faraj. He is working at Endava, head of commercial business development, all new business. A lot of experience in product, design thinking, and supporting both organizations and part of Start Ways First Believers as an example to help even startups think about how they might get product market fit. Should be a fun conversation. A lot of similarities in thinking as to our delivery process. We've spoken a number of times on the podcast about. Phil, thanks for joining us. All about expanding Endava now into APAC, but for you, let's share some experience that you've had over the journey. Let's
Thanks,
talk a bit
Andrew.
about how
Thanks
big a
for
product we've hit. Thanks, Phil.
awesome. Thanks for the welcome. Yeah, it's about 6 months now.
Yeah,
Since I joined Endava.
yeah.
We as an organisation are about maybe 3 years old here in APAC, and we're not new. We've been around for 20 something years in the UK and Europe and North America.
Yeah.
But it's exciting to be part of a business that does things a bit differently and is looking to really invest here in Australia and in the APAC region. And to be part of that has been awesome so far.
Yeah, brilliant, Phil. Let's unwind a bit about Phil. Tell me a bit about you've been in consulting quite a bit in terms of product like consulting.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about that in terms of what your experience has been like to date to get you to Endeavour.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so I started off my career in consulting. I did commerce and law at university, thinking that
Yeah.
I wanted to be a lawyer. But throughout that 5 year degree, you have a lot of time to reflect. And then I just really had this interest in digital and technology. And I guess I grew
Okay.
up around the time of Facebooks and Twitter and the early days of those things. So wanted to get in the space, but wasn't an engineer and wasn't technical. And so I figured consulting was going to be the best way in. And I was very fortunate enough to join Accenture Interactive at the time where that digital consulting was really starting to take off. And I was exposed to some brilliant people, from technologists to designers to leading product people, both locally and globally, and worked on some really cool work. And just throughout my career, I've kind of jumped from one leading brand to the next, exposed to thought leaders, people who are coming up with the next wave of thinking when it comes to technology and product. And throughout my career, as I've gone from building software or being on teams that build software, I've moved into more of a commercial role and helping the organizations I represent make sure that our customers are investing their money in the right way to build the right things. So, yeah, it's been an interesting journey and just over 10 years now. And I've seen a lot change in the last 10 years.
In the last year, probably too, or two.
It is
Significant change.
actually
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
And it's
it
funny,
is.
like I take it you're referencing AI and
Oh,
obviously
yeah, it's just
um,
throwing
what's like, I've
everything
seen
out the
so many
window is
things
how we used to
come.
operate. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen so many things come and go in that 10 years that like NFTs or Web3 or whatever
Mm.
else it might have been before, IoT devices. And I mean, IoT is still definitely a big industry to explore, but there's been all these different almost false starts of things that are going to come and disrupt the industry. But this one is different for sure. And Dava is all in on AI, and I use it on a day-to-day basis to improve the way that I approach my role. And
Yeah.
it's crazy to think that how I did work a year ago. It has changed so much, which is really cool.
It's fascinating to see the impact it's having across many organizations, not even just technical ones. It's
Yeah.
what are people doing in just general service businesses. I think you're getting a lot of value in terms of enabling them to produce proposals, to write reports, to research. It's fascinating to see how people are engaging with this technology. Yes, you're right. The impact, Web3, uh, blockchain has had this hoo-ha about it. It's going to change everything, but really hasn't eventuated. This is very different, and it's evolving very quickly, as we can see before our eyes.
Yeah, it feels like it's moving faster than. There's an old adage that the pace of technology it gets faster as we evolve, and that feels like what's happening now. It's like exponentially getting faster
Yeah.
day by day, minute by minute, and it's exciting. And I think one of the things that I'm noticing is that no one really has an idea of what the future actually looks like. It feels like we're all trying to figure it out together. And I think that's the really exciting part. It's kind of it's level set both the most
Hmm.
mature organizations and organizations who are just starting out wanting to embrace it. It feels like a real opportunity. And I think
Hmm.
that's what gets me most excited about, I guess, the change we're living through at the moment.
Yeah, well, I feel like we're, for once, all levels of organisation, small, medium, large, multinational, uh, flying the plane and building it at the same time.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. And you've never felt that in the time I've been in business for 17 years, and I never felt that as I do now. Everyone's just building on the fly and just testing, getting down to the offline. You said experimental process, and how is your environment experimenting. I think you'd see a lot more of that, or at least I hope you would. How are you seeing that in the market?
Yeah, well, what's interesting about AI is experimentation fundamentally can be done almost instantly.
Mm.
From a hypothesis testing perspective, there are a number of really cool startups I've come across where effectively you may have a problem that you're aware of, and if you're able to describe that problem and plug in, say, customer data or any other sort of first party data into a system, you can effectively ask it to come up with
Hmm.
possible solutions, and then ask it, based on what you know about our customers and our service,
Yeah.
which of these solutions you think is going to be the most likely to have a return, and then define what a return means. So plug in the metric that your organization has tasked you with, and you can do that in seconds. And it can, through its modeling, give you scenarios based on different variables, and you can kind of play around with it before building anything, even wireframes. And I think that is where there's so much that we haven't even, we've only just scratching the
Such a
surface
tip.
on the
Yeah, we
possibilities that are
are. You're
there.
right. Yeah. Correct. What sort of tools are you using at the moment in that world? It's quite
Yeah.
good to
So
share other people to community what they can test.
yeah. So
Yeah.
Endava is
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
OpenAI enterprise
Yeah.
partner. We're one of
Yeah. Yeah.
7 organizations globally. So we do a
Okay.
lot of the
So internally developing your
testing.
own
We
stuff. Yeah.
also made an acquisition in North
Hmm.
America of a company called Galaxy,
Yep.
Galax.e, and they
Hmm.
were an AI transformation partner. They started
Okay.
about maybe 10 years ago, and they
Hmm.
do kind of legacy modernization. So a lot of the
Hmm.
organizations I work with have these systems that are 30, 40 years old,
Yeah.
written in code languages that nobody still
Nobody knows
has the skills
anymore, and
for.
the people that are very well retired by now, they actually
Yeah,
understand it.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's.
And some of the tooling that they've built is our IP, but it does like analysis. It can map
Hmm.
dependencies it can
Yep.
do documentation, business rules of these legacy systems, and we're now taking that tooling and applying and asking our clients, what are the use cases you would love to see in the
Hmm.
software delivery lifecycle where you
Yep.
think AI can bring efficiencies and I guess optimize the way you're working. And so a lot
Hmm.
of it's been focused on kind of building software and getting us
Mm.
to a point where we're building with
Yep.
confidence, or we've gotten a strategy.
Hmm.
Where I've asked the team to take that tooling is more into the product space. So
Yep.
help me come up with ideas, help me validate these ideas, give me confidence in the things I'm going to build, rather than
Hmm.
getting a team of product people and designers to spend weeks coming up with
Building
ideas
stuff.
and wireframing.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
part that's really exciting for me.
Yeah. I agree. And in every one of our comms around our business, I share a bit of a stat. 86% of software projects fail. It's probably higher now. They're either over time, over budget, or the wrong solution. Spend most of your time solving for the wrong solution piece, and the rest will work out itself. That's the philosophy of how I look at everything. Agree, you need to be spending a lot of time in that space. If we can get AI to do that, it takes away the challenge of, especially if you're at that small medium enterprise, to go, mate, I don't have time to invest 3 months, 6 months doing market research, speaking to
Yeah.
customers. Yeah, but if you don't do that, likelihood is you're going to build something that's wrong.
Yeah.
Now you can bring that back to weeks, not months. So it's a huge shift in the thinking. I know you can do stuff in minutes, but you still need to have the conversations. Still need to go out there and speak to stakeholders, and that always takes time, just to ensure you're going down that at least some regimented
Yeah.
validation process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I guess that's what the inception of Agile
Mm.
was when it came
Yeah.
around in the late
Mm.
'90s. Agile's
Hmm.
as a way of building
Yeah.
software was in this kind of iterative 2 weeks sprint cycle and making sure that you were delivering in thin slices. So not doing a big bang delivery, months down the track after you've gathered requirements at a point in time. And again, Agile is a thing that consultants got their hands on, and it's now become this really hard thing that's got so many different definitions and ways of being applied, and enterprises fundamentally probably unable to actually be agile businesses, and so
They can't execute because I need a budget to work towards and I need a time
yeah,
frame,
well,
and
the
they
way
want
that
to
the
work
business
waterfall
cases
generally.
funding
Yeah, yeah,
they've
it's
got
hard. Yeah,
shareholders they report to on a quarterly basis, and they have to show certain metrics. And so when you take a step back from what the business is trying to do and deliver technology, it may not necessarily align with the customer value, which obviously then dictates the business value and so forth. So
true.
it's been a real challenge for the industry. But where AI, to your point, is it's not here to replace humans in the loop. And I think that's kind of one of the really interesting things you mentioned around how do you go ask your stakeholders the right questions? How do you increase the quality of the questions you're asking and the information you're seeking? I think that's where AI can really be a really useful tool. And the other thing is always on listening. So it's very expensive to have people constantly speaking to your users, your customers, and your employees. Even it's constantly scanning the service you're delivering and any sort of unmet needs in that experience. Whereas having AI agents or tooling sort of active across your service layer allows you to constantly pick up the
Great
signals
insights,
that
yeah,
are coming through
without
and the
doing anything.
insights. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it just sits there and automatically does it. So it will level up organisations that really invest, and if you're not, you're crazy. But it will level organisations up, and the service we deliver is up, and I think yes, you talk about it will add value to humans and help us do our jobs better. It's another tool in the toolkit, really. I think of it in the frame of before we had cranes, we couldn't build skyscrapers. Yeah, we could only build 1, 2 story homes, if that. And the tools evolved. We had picks and shovels at the beginning, and it's evolved. AI is just another hemisphere. It should get
Yeah.
us to the moon, in reality, if you put that analogy together, in terms of what we can do in an organization. Customize. I see technology being customized for every organization across the globe in their own way and working. It's dynamically shifting as we speak.
Yeah, I think one of
Yeah.
the differences in your analogy is that we wanted to build skyscrapers, so we built
Yeah.
cranes to help us do it.
Mm.
I fundamentally don't think we know what
Yeah.
we're building
Yeah,
next,
that's fair.
and
Yeah.
I think
There's a gap there. Yeah.
and this is one of the things that I'm noticing because I spend a lot of time
Yeah. Yeah.
helping organizations deliver a better customer experience. And the customer experience went from being delivered via, call centers to websites, to mobile apps, to chatbots. And now the service layer, the interaction layer between a brand and a customer is disappearing. It's becoming everywhere and anywhere.
Yeah. It's
And
omni-channel, as they call it, right? It's
well,
everywhere.
it's beyond.
All different
It's
channels.
every
Yeah.
channel, any channel.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
this constant. Our expectations are shifting so fast that I actually don't know what it is. What this next wave will look like, and I don't think anyone really does. And
Well, I
that's
think, no, we
the
don't know.
really exciting part, I think,
Yeah.
and the opportunity, I guess, for a lot
Yeah.
of brands and organizations.
And you can understand where fear comes in for people, right? Because we don't know where we're going. We're
Yes.
walking that fine line between take another step and figure it out. That's the reality of what it is. And not most people. Most people aren't comfortable in that environment. That's 80% of people aren't. Being in business forever, founding a business, I run multiple products. I just love that environment, so I thrive in it. It's the unknown, it's the excitement of it, but it's a bit of a drug jumping into that. That's what it feels like sometimes. Yeah,
Well, you got to take the leap. I
yeah,
was listening to a podcast actually early this morning from the founder of Kazaa and Skype, and
yeah,
he was, again, a well-paid job in his early 30s, living in Amsterdam around the late 90s, just before the dot-com boom, and he saw what was happening with the internet and kind of the web movement. And he just decided to jump in. He didn't know what he was going to start. He didn't know what problem he was going to solve. He just knew that he needed to be in his own
Just jump
business,
on.
starting
Yeah.
something. And he found his way to the whole peer-to-peer sharing, and he actually started that movement, which gave us things like Kazaa and Skype and so forth. And that's kind of how I feel around AI. I feel like I don't know what problem I want to go solve. I was to go start something myself, but I feel like it's just a rapid. You've got to jump in and you've got to try and figure it out, and you probably will fail, but it's how many times can you fail quickly and learn and then go try something else and try something else. And I think that's the really, to your point, I think that partly gets me excited.
On that failure piece, you mentioned it offline. The organisations encouraging failure. We can fail faster yet again because of the technology and test new things quickly. We can spin up wireframes. Maybe you can develop stuff a lot quicker now at a product-led level, research quicker. So we can fail quicker, which is just going to be exponentially going to deliver more product and service that hits the mark. That's the reality of what we're walking into. But what type of product are we going to be leaning into in the future is the unknown in my mind. I don't
Exactly.
know what we're going to be engaging with. I don't think anyone. That's the unknown, really.
Well, yeah, it is. And so I'm actually talking now to an airline in
Yep.
Australia and they're looking to experiment with AI, and
Yep.
it's really exciting. Like I love traveling personally. I love going to any booking website to search. Here are the dates I'm thinking of going. Here's the city I
Yep.
live in and where I want to go, and that experience of how we book flights has been around for many years, whether it was a travel
Hasn't
agent
changed. Yeah.
and now it's online and we can kind of do it in the palm of our hands. But now it's probably going to change and it's going to become more of a conversational UI and experience of some sort of chat interface, potentially not so much a chatbot, but something that you kind of just describe. I want to go away maybe around Easter to take advantage of the 10 days if you take the annual leave between Easter and Anzac Day. I want to go somewhere a bit warm or likely to be warm, maybe near a beach. I kind of want to leave in the morning but be back in the afternoon. I've got two young kids, so somewhere where there's a playground or kids activities. Where do you think I should go? And
We'll
that
just
that
find you
is
some hotspots.
shifting.
Yeah,
It's
it's another way of
shifting kind
seeking.
of,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And
yeah,
then that over time, it then shifts our behaviour and how we
yeah.
interact with travel and
Of
how we
course.
look at travel. It's no longer about, well, I want to go to this place and I want to go to this place, and how we discover those places, and whether it's through traditional marketing or influencer marketing and destination kind of marketing events, it's going to shift as well. So yeah, the flow on effects of the service layer changing, how we interact with the brands around us, will have bigger effects across all these other fields. It's not just about technology. It's fundamentally how we exist, how we operate, that I think is changing before us, and we're, I guess, we're part of that revolution, which is really exciting but scary.
So I'm thinking, how's it changed in the current environment that you're in? You mentioned a few tools you're using and bits and
Yeah.
pieces that are critical to how you operate and think about technology and engagement with stakeholders. What's the big pivotal shifts that you've seen that in the space past 6 months?
Yeah. So when I first started in, say, 2014, 2015, design
Yep.
thinking was kind of it was just hit its kind of peak in terms of popularity. And we would often spend 10 to 12 weeks doing customer research, looking at the company's technology, their systems, their people, their processes, come up with these big service design blueprints, mapping out customer journeys and the parts of the business that sit underneath the touch point that you and I might have with a brand. And then we would go solve problems, and we would spend another couple of weeks coming up with ideas to solve that problem. It was I'm a big fan of that process, but I can understand now we don't have the luxury of the time or the investment to go and do those things. So the timeline on doing the design thinking has been compressed into weeks, if not days, without really having the same depth of information and understanding of the problem we're going to solve, which I think has always been a bit of a problem. And I've been trying to fly the flag of no, we need to take our time to make sure we're building the right thing. What's changing now is I now can say, I don't think we need 10 to 12 weeks anymore and teams of designers to go and do the service design. With AI tooling and I guess the modeling that goes into it, we probably can accelerate a lot of that design thinking with confidence. And there is a platform that recently Accenture in the US acquired, got a stake into, called Aru, AARU. And they've built a tooling, as far as I can understand from what they've shared publicly, that allows you to predict any scenario. So they got the headlines by trying to predict the US election outcome, effectively running it through, I think, something like 1 million different scenarios to try to pick a winner. And so that platform now, the way that Accenture is positioning it, is in this product discovery part of building software. You can effectively have every type of customer that ever may interact with your brand and the different mindset they may have, and effectively test a proposition with those people to come up with or predict which proposition is likely going to be the most successful for your brand. And now you can do that with a click of a button.
Yeah, it just level sets the whole world, really, when you think
Well,
about it.
those who can access that information. And one of the things that I guess you have to caution, and I'm sure you've experienced it too in using AI, is that it's not always accurate. It's
Oh no, you need to look through what's come back and make some assessments of it. There's, from an accuracy perspective, it's 80% there. You're going to have some offshoots. That's what I've seen in the world that we've been working in.
yeah,
We've been more custom building our own sort of stuff and workflows and agents and bits and pieces. And we'll find that sometimes it makes up a lot of crap. That's the
yeah,
reality, but you got to pare it back. I feel like sometimes it goes too far. That's the
yeah.
angle that I've seen.
Well,
Yeah, so
I think one of the bigger challenges is, again, the longer we become dependent or our behavior changes and we use a ChatGPT or a Gemini or any of the other of these toolings, is that we also start to lose the ability to validate, or the need
or even
to
critical
validate
thinking
that
around
information,
it,
the
because you
critical
still
thinking.
need to
Yeah.
bring that into it.
And
Yeah, that's right.
exactly, we take what it gives us as gospel and we lose the ability to actually, to look at that and question whether it's accurate or not, or how to
I
go
think
actually
some law
validate.
cases in the US would say, please don't do that. Um, a couple of lawyers putting false cases into their arguments, quite fascinating. But
Yeah.
you can't rely on it to do that. You still need to use some
But
data
people are
about you.
lazy, as I'm sure
Yeah,
you and I
that's
can
true.
imagine.
Yeah,
And it's not so much lazy, but it's
yeah,
just we
yeah.
settle into new behaviors very quickly when the
Yep.
convenience trumps everything. And when it comes to experiences, from what I've been exposed to, so
Yep.
these things are just too convenient, and they do such an awesome job that I think we're at risk of. As you said, losing that need for critical thinking and relying too much on these new products and services to do these things that probably required critical thought. Now, I guess the big question is, well, how important is critical thought going to be in the
That's a
future?
very fascinating question to ponder. As we get better and better, the likelihood it will produce better and better results, right? So, do we need people validating on top of this? I'll take it back to the context of designing product, because that's what we're using it significantly in. It's sped up our product design process by 5, 10 times.
Yeah,
Okay, so in that design thinking world where we use product for product design, that's where we've utilized it and take advantage of it as a business. But that will layer into other aspects of business already is. So, in terms of the critical thinking side, it's enabled us to bring on other resources that maybe aren't as well versed in that area and still get good result. So I would say critical thinking becomes a less and less important as the technology gets better and better, or as we learn to work with the technology better and better. Because I think it's almost good enough. It's more, how do we work with it and
yeah.
wrangle it? Think of it as a wild bull that's running around. How do we just rein it in and just get it to act as the way we need it? And that's how I see AI.
Yeah, well, actually, the founder of Fjord,
Yeah,
which was a design
yeah,
thinking innovation agency that Accenture bought,
yeah,
and I was part of the Fjord team for a number of years. He gave a talk maybe in 2018
yeah,
at a conference called "The Future is Human," and this was kind of around the start of self-driving cars and
yep,
AI, really early days. And his talk was all around the idea that in studies that had been done at the time, whenever you tested a human versus AI would often come out on top. So getting a radiographer to look at a CT scan and try to diagnose
wins.
cancer and so forth.
Yeah,
But then if you put AI and the human together, they were stronger than AI by itself. And I think that sort of sentiment is what you're talking to around,
Yeah.
how do you supplement, or how do you complement each other, I guess, is probably where there's opportunity now. And so, and you see it on LinkedIn all the time, and the content that we're exposed to, where a lot of people are saying that it's not so much AI will replace your jobs, but if you're not embracing AI, then maybe you're at risk of being
Oh,
innovative.
you are 100% at risk. That's my take on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
it's
think
not
that's like the
maybe.
next 5 years, right? I
Yeah,
think that's the next
yeah,
5 years, that those who can embrace
yeah.
AI will win. But what happens after that 5 years, once AI proliferates and it becomes
Everywhere.
everywhere? I don't know. I don't know what the answer looks like, and that's yeah,
We'll work it out when we get there. And I think it might be less than 5 years in my mind, the way what I'm seeing just in our little world. Yeah, it's moving there quicker than I think 5 years. I don't know what our business will be in 5 years, and I think that's the fun of it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah,
don't
and
know what
I'm the
any.
same.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have a existential crisis almost daily now, which is very
yeah,
taxing
yeah,
and emotionally tough. But yeah, even the game that I'm in, the consulting professional services, I've seen it evolve throughout my 10-year career. But the pace at which it's evolving now, and the types of problems that we are solving, and just the industry at large seems to be going through a lot of change, thanks to a a lot of organizations we work with have access to their own talent, and they've built up the capabilities themselves internally. But now there's this added layer of the tooling is becoming so much better and easier to adopt. There's things like low code and no code and so forth. And then there's going to be the wave of AI tooling. So the need for things that people that I work with, and the teams that I put forward to solve problems is changing. And so we as a business are trying to change and solve different problems.
yes.
And it'll be interesting. I don't know what I'll be doing in 5 years' time, but definitely I don't think it'll be the same what I'm doing
It
today.
will. I guarantee you, it won't be the same. You've seen what's happened in 12 months. You're doing it a different way now.
Yeah,
We uh, the jobs we will create, I'm not sure. It's an unknown. A lot of people think about if we're going to lose potentially a number of jobs, how are we going to replace them? That's the pondering question right now, because jobs will get impacted because we can do so much more effectively. Where does everyone end up? It's a conversation, like you said, all over LinkedIn now, where people raise it. Okay, what's the end game here? But yeah, it is a major leap into the unknown, and faith that there's something at the other end in this evolution, because that's what it is.
yeah, and I don't like to be so
Yeah,
pessimistic about the
yeah,
future.
yeah.
Like when I'm sure the advent of, like, from the car, people
The
worrying about,
reality is everyone worries about everything, and you see it
yeah,
everywhere. You need to come in with rose-colored glasses to anything new, in my mind, because there's
yeah,
so much opportunity around it right now. If you're willing to jump in and just have a look and see
yeah.
what you can do with the technology and how much value you can add to more people. So that's the angle that I'm coming in at, is that. But you see the challenge with people and how they are embracing it, and within organizations that you're impacting with the technology, there's
Yeah.
concern and a bit of fear underneath the hood as to, ooh, what's coming.
Yeah, I think the way
Yeah,
I like to frame it, and a mental model that I like to use, and I think if you
yeah,
look back through history, and every time we've
yeah,
had an advancement in technology, you gain something and you lose something.
mm-hmm,
And so an example, with something as simple as being able to invent the pen and paper. So before that, we used to have to memorize things. We shared stories by talking. That's kind of how our species kind of evolved. When we invented the pen and paper, we didn't need to remember things as much, but we gained the ability to write things down and pass things through history. And again, if you track communication through history up until today, every time we've gone from the next technological advancement, whether it was to telephone, to the mobile phone, to email, to instant messaging, we gained something and we lost something. And I think that's effectively what we're seeing now with the phase that we're in. We will gain things and we will lose things. So yeah, we may lose some of the traditional jobs and I guess industries that we're familiar with. But the industry that I'm currently in, consulting, is only 30, 40 years old. So
very true.
it's in whatever comes next, we'll gain something and we'll lose something. And I think what's different, or potentially different, is that the table stakes, the fundamental building blocks of what we know and how we build operate, they probably need to change too, given that this change is happening just fundamentally feels bigger and deeper and different to getting the mobile phone or getting the web or so forth. So yeah, it's hard to predict it, but I guess that's the really cool part is there's just being part of the discourse and just being able to share an opinion with people like yourself to try to guess, I guess, at our best.
Oh, it's a guessing game, right?
Yeah,
And I think we'll use the paper and pen or something to write down what happened during the AI transformation period, and someone will read along it and take some insight from it. But yeah, as we evolve in 20 years' time, I wonder what my kids are going to be walking into. I've got an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 2-year-old. What does schooling mean right now? What should they really be focusing on? How do we educate it into a world like this? It needs to shift drastically, because, yeah, 10, 15 years' time from now is not going to be what it is today, clearly. But we don't know what it's going to be, so that's the hard part.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In terms of what you're seeing where people are testing, experimenting, what's some of the big things you're seeing? You mentioned chatbots, how we might be engaging, changing customer experience. A lot of that stuff you're doing
Yeah.
is at the front end and customer end. What are you seeing with this technology that's shifting the way we might engage as consumers?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it goes back to agentic AI, which is
Yeah,
currently the flavor of AI that we're all
yeah,
really focused on. That's effectively shifting as I said, the experience layer that we have with
mhm,
brands. It's not so much about chatbots, whilst chatbots can serve have a role and are great for their purpose. The agent is actually taking it almost a bit further and can wear many different hats. It's not just
mhm.
customer service, which is traditionally where a chatbot was living maybe
Yeah,
5 or
so
6 years
cost of
ago.
service questions that it can answer, and it's really in a swim
Yeah.
lane, right? Yeah,
But for instance, so we've got a tool that it's an agentic platform. One of
yeah,
the agents is a solution architect. One of the agents is a
mhm,
product manager. One of the agents is a
mhm,
lead developer. One of the
yeah,
agents is a BA. And so that was 4 different roles that
mhm,
you would need to come up with a roadmap to build software.
mm,
Now you can plug in a legacy code base, documentation, code
mhm,
repositories, Confluence, knowledge management systems, and ask these 4 agents,
mm,
hey, help me modernize. And it will give you user stories and functional requirements. It'll give you test scripts. It'll give you
mhm.
the architecture, the targeted architecture, and all that kind of stuff. And it'll make recommendations. So, agentic AI is definitely the current paradigm in which we're seeing
Mm,
brands wanting to explore AI and adopt it.
mhm.
And it goes all the way from I've seen platforms that can allow you to use agents to go through your booking experience or your experience to sign up and use your service and give you feedback on it. You let agents be reps of your business to take orders, fulfill orders. All the use cases are almost endless. It's how
They
creative
are
can you
pretty
be?
much, yeah. It's more
Yeah,
creative thinking, yeah. It's what can we test try and what might it be. But I think from an agent perspective, it can support, like you said, any type of role. If you think about it that way, and probably go beyond what 80% of people could do in their role, which is the interesting part. So it's fascinating what you're doing in the space of how you can support those particular roles and take an old technology to bring it into the new world,
yeah.
as to what it might be. Is it in that world? What are you finding if you give it all that context? Is it just trying to update and take the old technology and just rewrite the code in new form, or is it really starting to get to a layer of hang on a minute, we've got this market research where technology is going. How might we shift the stack to something completely different? Are you getting to that level or just rinse, repeat?
Yeah. I think
Yeah, yeah,
lift and shift migrations.
yeah.
That's not a pathway that we would recommend unless
Mm,
there was an extenuating circumstance that needed that. I think taking a platform thinking approach or a platform centric approach,
yes.
building in a composable way
Mm,
for whatever you're trying to modernize. Is the path that we typically the journey will take our clients on.
mhm,
But yeah, I think building composable modular architecture allows organizations to constantly adapt to whatever the customer needs as they evolve. And I think that's kind of where I've built a career, is helping organizations unlock that overlap of product strategy and platform strategy. So product strategy is what is the thing we need to build, and that's where the customer research and understanding needs is really important, getting that down pat. And then platform strategy is, well, now that you have an understanding of where your customers are, how do you enable your development teams, engineering teams to be able to build the software or the services that your customers are expecting in the channel that they're expecting it to be built. And I think that fundamentally requires a rewiring of these legacy systems and the way that they were built, and the lessons of building in a language that is going to be deprecated, or in a technology that may not be around. So you have to try to build with this what's going to have longevity, and what approach is going to allow us to constantly evolve and not be locked into something that we built in the 90s.
I think, and that's a question I ask myself: what is longevity in given the current state of technology today?
Exactly.
I don't think we have technology that sits around for 20 years anymore. Yeah,
you are totally.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle for the enterprise and for governments that have built, who have these big behemoths of legacy systems that power, the actual bank itself, or this government agency itself. So it's going to be interesting, and a lot of technology providers, so commercial off-the-shelf, ServiceNow, Salesforce, some of these big platforms, they're obviously investing heavily themselves and fundamentally changing the way that they deliver their software to their customers in response to that shift. It almost feels like it's going to be a constantly evolving space. That the way that you build and maintain your software,
there's no end game.
Is alive. It's a symbiotic being that needs to constantly adapt as the world around it changes, and I think that's the world we're slowly shifting towards. But there are some businesses, unfortunately, that are going to struggle to get there quickly enough, and I don't know what happens in that scenario. It's still too early to tell.
That is the unknown. Philip, this has been a fascinating chat, and hopefully everyone's learned something or got some value from that. Thank you for coming on Dev-Ready Podcast, talking about what's happening in your world in terms of product. And there is a lot of shift in that environment, but there's a lot of shift in every environment right now. If you're really willing to look and dig in, you'll see it everywhere, especially if you're working in any sort of white-collar environment, if you can say that these days. T-shirts, working in white-collar, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it's a fascinating space, and I think in 6 months' time it's going to be different again.
We'll have to catch up in 6 months and see.
I'd love to see where you're at, what's going on. And,
awesome. Thanks for having me on. It was great to chat.
Thanks for coming to the Dev-Ready Podcast. Cheers, Phil.
Thanks.